Hello, everybody, and welcome to this summer's first online Fireside Chat. I'm going to be your host, Elizabeth Beisel, and joining me today is the one and only Natalie Hinds. And I'm so excited for this conversation that she and I are going to have, not because she's a dear teammate of mine, but more importantly, a dear friend. And she has really taught me so much over the last few months. And I kept thinking to myself, if Natalie can teach me this much, she can teach everybody else this much, if not more. And so first and foremost, I want to thank CG Sports Network for putting this on. Caroline, as always, is behind the scenes, doing her thing, making this run. I want to thank Natalie for her time and being willing to open up and be vulnerable. And I want to thank all of you guys joining in, tuning in today, because this conversation needs to be had. It's very important. We're going to be touching on very serious and heavy topics. But I think it's really important. And the conversation is going to run pretty smoothly because it's Natalie and I. And I've known Natalie for probably close to 10 years now. And so although it will be serious topics, very relevant to the climate within today's society that we're living in, you're going to leave this conversation excited. You're going to understand more about what Natalie's perspective is, where she's coming from, what it's like to be a Black female swimmer in a predominantly white sport. All of these things are super important, and you're going to leave excited, more educated. You're going to understand Natalie more, Black culture more. And I'm really, really pumped to be here alongside Natalie, helping guide that conversation smoothly. And that's simply what I'm going to do today. The show is Natalie's show. I am just a little bit of a crutch for her, but she's going to share and open up and be vulnerable with all of you. And really educate you guys. And that's what today is about. And so before I introduce Nat, I need to list off her extensive accomplishments in and outside of the pool. I actually have a list on my computer that I'm going to pull up right now because there's so many. So Natalie is a 20-time All-American at the University of Florida. For those of you that don't know what that is, that basically means she A-finaled 20 times at the NCAA championships. Pretty insane. She was a 6-time school record holder at the University of Florida. She was a 3-time captain at the University of Florida. I was lucky enough to be a captain alongside her for 2 years, which was really fun. She went 1, 2, 3 at the 2015 NCAAs in the 100 free alongside Simone Manuel and Leah Neal. And they were the first Black trio to ever go 1, 2, 3 in an event at the NCAA swimming championships, which Natalie is going to touch on later in our conversation. Pretty insane, monumental moment. She's a member of the Cali Condors, the new ISL League team, and she's now training at the University of Georgia as a professional athlete. I'm going to say go Gators, also go Dogs, because I love to support that. And she is also the designer and owner of her own tapestry company called Luminary. And if you haven't checked that out, all of this information is available on nataliehinds.com. Her social handle is @_NHinds. I encourage all of you guys after this conversation to check that out. But without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, Natalie Hinds. Come on screen, girl.
Hello.
Yes. There she is.
Thank you for all of the nice words that you said. I appreciate it.
I could have kept going. I was like, oh, I'm only at 3 minutes, 45 seconds. That's actually shorter than I thought I would be.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really excited. Like you said, I think that these conversations need to be had. And you and I have known each other for such a long time. Like, I just feel like you're the perfect person to have this conversation with because it's just going to be so easy and free flowing.
Yeah, and I think that's one thing that will make this so special because, like I said earlier, it is very serious topics that we're talking about. A matter of life or death.
Yeah.
And it's going to be serious, but it's also you and I. So it's like people are going to be happy leaving this. And like I said, more educated, and they're going to understand more. And that's what I'm most excited about because Natalie has done that for me over the past few months.
Yeah.
And it's been
conversations.
Yeah. And I've been vulnerable and open up to her and asked her questions that maybe I'm embarrassed of not knowing the answer to, or maybe I haven't understood things. And so for those of you who are tuning in right now, don't be embarrassed. You know, that's what Natalie is here for. She's here to educate all of us and open our eyes to things that maybe we've never seen before or understood or noticed. So thank you, Nat, for being here. I really, really appreciate it.
Yeah. And just to note, like, I am learning so much every week as well. I used to never read just because I don't have the patience to read, but I think it's something now that is important that I need to do, and just always be open to being curious, being a lot more curious, and not just having my head in the sand and worrying about swimming and just those things that are right in front of my face. I think this experience has definitely taught me that I don't know a lot. So it's okay that you don't know. I mean, a lot of my swim friends have reached out about like you have reached out with questions, and although they think they seem silly, like I wouldn't expect some people to know those things unless you are Black or unless you have been through those experiences before. So I mean, in this instance, it really isn't a dumb question. I know that we've heard that in school, but it definitely is true pertaining to this topic.
Right. So just to start this conversation, can we talk about the current climate that we're in and kind of how that's had an effect on you and what it means for the sport of swimming and basically all those surrounding ideas that are swirling in your head?
Yeah, I mean, it is a lot. I mean, I don't even really know where to start. I guess we can start back in May with George Floyd. I mean, that was kind of like where the flashlight was turned on, and everything that had been talked about is on a video. You know, and I mean, I had posted something on Facebook just with my thoughts. It was just kind of like a Saturday morning thoughts, and I was trying to just make sense of it all because the current climate is very tense. I mean, I can obviously only speak for me, but I know a lot of my Black friends feel this way, like very tired, very just hopeless. I mean, those are the only two words that I can describe at this moment in time, because this is a fight for equality. This is not a fight for, we want to be treated as the number one race. We deserve this. We deserve that. We really just are fighting to be equal, to have the same opportunity, to be paid the same, to be looked at the same, and to be given the same opportunities. And so when you're literally fighting so hard day in and day out, when you're working twice as hard as everyone else, and you're not seeing the recognition, you're not seeing the results, that's tiring. The only way I can describe it for people who can't or haven't experienced that is when you're working for a goal and you've put in work day in and day out for years and you still haven't seen that result, but you know you deserve it. That's what's been going on for like 400 years for Black people. So to have the light shine on Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, and the countless others that have received police brutality and who have lost their lives because of this, that is basically what it feels like. And at this point, I mean, yeah, I have my days where I just don't really know exactly how I can help. I don't exactly know how I should feel. I mean, some days I feel very angry. And other days I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. I just have to focus on this task. But in terms of, I mean, I guess that would explain the climate for the first question that you asked. But then for the reason why, I guess, I mean, it is kind of hard to explain now that I have the question in front of me, but I feel like, I mean, it's kind of emotional as well, but everyone thinks that, like I said, that we're trying to fight for something even crazier. And being a swimmer in a predominantly white sport, I think it just exacerbates in my mind because now I'm hyper aware of everything. So, you know, I'm the only Black swimmer on deck every day. And that's something that I have just not like recently noticed, but I think it affects me. All these feelings that you've suppressed as a kid. So when you're on deck and someone like wants to touch my hair because it's puffy. Oh, it reminds me of a poodle. Like those are words that aren't necessarily deemed to be harmful, but it has been going on so long that I hear something like that. I don't like it, but I just suppress it and I laugh and I move on. Same with when people are telling me, you're so articulate for a Black person. I'm like, Thank you. I take it as a compliment, but in reality, it is very hurtful because that the
Like,
color.
why do you have to say it that way?
Yeah, the color of my skin shouldn't, it shouldn't matter if I'm black or white, depending on how I talk. So those are just a couple examples of like microaggressions that I have faced growing up in the sport of swimming. And I think a lot of these feelings that I'm talking about now have only recently been identified. Have I had to sit and I've had to, think about, why am I so angry? Like out of nowhere. It's like, why am I waking up tense? Why am I tense throughout the day? Why do I feel so caustic against everyone? And those are, part of the manifestation of those feelings that like you have to sit and figure out, what do they mean? And the second part of that is, now that you know what they mean, how are you going to carry yourself going forward? And for me, it's been an eye-opening experience to the people that I not like surround myself with closely, but that I do interact with on a day-to-day basis. And I'm not like a petty Patricia and taking down notes like, oh, she didn't say this or she didn't do that. But it is very interesting to have this going on, have basically, in my words, a racial war going on in this country right now, and to see how everyone reacts. There's people who put their head in the sand and they're like, look, this is a lot. I don't want to deal with it. Mm-hmm. I've had people who are the epitome of white privilege, but have really, really opened up and asked those hard questions, read the books, continue to ask the questions, that I have been very surprised, like very happily surprised. And I'm like, okay, like I'm surrounding myself with good people. And then there's also on the flip side of that, there's people that I expected or would do the opposite of what they're doing. Like I said earlier, the people with their head in the sand, I'm like very confused. But like I said, it's now that I have realized my feelings, how am I going to carry myself forward? Am I going to waste time and worrying about, what other people think or how they're going to, what do I think is right versus what they think is right? No, I can't waste time on that because to be honest with you, I am so tired at the end of every day. And I know a lot of that has to deal with emotional, not just physical. And I don't have time to worry about if somebody will come around or if, my expectations of someone will be met. So that is kind of like a battle that I'm going back and forth with. And I know a lot of my Black friends are also going back and forth with that as well. It's just kind of like, it's an eye-opening experience to just see the people in your orbit, how they react to something like this. So that is an ongoing thing. And I think that will be going on for a long time because now it's like the flashlight shined on that. So you can't really like forget about it.
Right. Yeah. I think like hopefully because you're putting all of this out there, it's going to reach a web of people that needed to hear this and will learn something and actually absorb that like a sponge and really listen to what you're saying, not just hear, but listen. Mm-hmm. But I would love, especially because you and I are obviously the same athlete. We're swimmers. We're on the same team together. Can you talk about your experience growing up in a predominantly white sport, in a predominantly white area, and kind of how you have now noticed how that had an effect on you?
Yeah, definitely.
And microaggressions that maybe came out that you're now thinking about like, oh, wow, that wasn't okay.
Yeah. I've had a lot of those moments lately. But I mean, regardless of any of that, I enjoyed where I grew up. I think that it really did shape me into who I am today. But yeah, I grew up in Midland, Texas, and it is a very, very Republican area. Probably like the most, I mean, it's very Republican. Like George Bush is from there. Both Bushes are from there. Mm-hmm. So I went to the same schools as they did, and there's really not any other school to go to. But yeah, I'm from there. I decided to swim when I was 4. So I was swimming it's called City of Midland Aquatics. It's just this big program, really an awesome facility. And I swam there. My sister swam there. And yeah, so growing up, I was the only Black person on my team from honestly the whole time. I would say a couple Black people came and went, but they weren't really serious about the sport. And the way that my parents raised me was to be cognizant of other people and what color they are. But like young Natalie just wanted to win. So I would hear them, but I would do my own thing. Like I didn't care who you were. I didn't care how old you were. I wanted to beat you. And so race was like not on my mind. I didn't care that I wouldn't go up to my dad and be like, Dad, I beat the white girl. I would say, Dad, did you see me? I beat her. And he would, shoot me off because that's not very nice thing to say. But yeah, I was just like bullheading the whole way until I was 12. My dad and coach decided that, okay, we need to leave Midland. You need better competition. So we started to travel to Dallas like once a month or for whatever meet was in Dallas. And so I remember specifically we went to Grapevine, which is a very ritzy white area. And it was just like a beginning of the season meet. I had on a little aqua blade. Like it wasn't a crazy.
Ooh, the aqua blade.
I'm dating myself for sure, but it was my dad. My dad traveled with me all the time. So it was my dad, my coach, and I, just the three amigos going. So we went to this meet and, there's enough people in the stands I could still see my dad because he was the only Black person. But I do remember seeing him isolated. Like he was sitting in a group, he was sitting in the middle of people, but nobody was sitting close to him. And I mean, I see that and I see it now versus when I was 12 and it means something totally different to me. And my first run-in with just not being welcomed and looking back now is because of my race is, when you're 12 and you swim and you're in the warm down pool, people are talking. I mean, people are like, hey, how'd you race? This and that. And to me, it was never an issue. I'm a very loud person. I love to talk. I love to meet new people. And so for me, like, stopping at the wall to get into this conversation that nobody let me in, nobody looked my way, backs were turned. And so I just, ended up swimming, finishing my warm down, and it was a 2-day meet. And basically the whole meet, my dad and I were just isolated. And I'm 100% sure my dad knew what was going on because of the area and the actions of the people, but I had no idea at all.
Right.
And it could have been because I was in a bubble. Like Midland is a bubble. So here I am thinking that everybody's treated equal in this small bubble of 100,000 people. And when I go out to a bigger city, I'm just like, well, those girls are mean. I don't know why they were mean, but those girls are not nice. So that was really my first run-in with racism on deck. And it's sad that I didn't realize that at the time. I feel like that's where my experience kind of differs because a lot of the stuff that I'm realizing, I'm 26. So, I mean, I guess it's better late than never, but I do wish like going back, if, that I was more aware and observed those types of things. But yeah, growing up, that's what I dealt with. I went to Dallas all the time. I can remember countless times of the same thing happening. So it really wasn't anything new. And I also do wish like Simone, and Simone's from Houston. And so she has a very different experience. I mean, both of our experiences are similar, but she's experienced a lot more racism than I have. But I do remember seeing her on deck. And I mean, we didn't really say anything to each other because I guess it's kind of like, in my opinion, you have to look out for yourself, where in fact that you really shouldn't have to do that. You should be looking out for each other because you're like the only two people out of over 1,000 swimmers is you two on deck who are Black.
Yeah. Which
is crazy. And so, that's like where I met Simone. It's like on deck at a bigger, at a state meet or whatever. But we only became friends really when we were at a USA camp together and we were able to connect there. And she's been so helpful during all of this, like the past 6 months. She's been really helpful, great sounding board. I'm very grateful for her. But, until I got to Florida, did I feel like I could take a breath and I'm like, oh, I kind of belong here because I kind of see faces that look like mine. Cause I mean, just think I'm Black, I'm a swimmer. I don't play volleyball. I don't play basketball. So you can just imagine honestly a weekly, daily occurrence of, people coming up to me and saying, You play basketball? No, sir, I don't. Well, you must play volleyball. No, sir, I swim. And then they walk off.
Yeah.
And I'm like, it's like time after time, it really hurts your feelings because they don't know why you swim. Like, like I'm better at this than I am at other sports. And like that happened daily, especially when I got older and I was driving myself around to more public places because I had a car and stuff. But I mean, Black people too were like, what number are you? I'm like, I swim. I wear a swimsuit.
Yeah, I wear a cap with Florida on it.
Yeah. And then they wouldn't want anything to do with me. So it's like this stereotype that has been going on and has been rooted for years affects white people one way and affects Black people one way, where Black people believe that they should not be in pools. And it is just so bizarre to me because it hurts my feelings just as much as if a white person would say, why do you do that? I mean, just last week I had a white man ask me those same two questions. Do I play basketball or volleyball? I said, no, I swim. And he said, well, yeah, you can do that all you want, and turns away and walks away. And I'm like, I have no idea what just happened.
What does that even mean, sir?
I don't know. And I'm, at this point, it's like, why do you want to waste your energy on that? You know what I'm saying? So it's just so prevalent. It's an everyday occurrence. Like, people think that just because something got caught on tape, it's like an outpouring and it's just like such a huge deal, which it is. But Black people go through this on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I don't really know how else to say that. Like that's a daily gym occurrence for me, is someone interrupting my workout and asking, do I do something other than what I do? And when I say I swim, it's like, you couldn't, you shouldn't.
Yeah. And I honestly, now that you're saying it, and I feel bad because I was just completely unaware of it happening. But when we travel for meets at Florida, like you and I going to fill our water bottle up at the water fountain, they'd go up to you or I and say, what sport are you? And we'd be like, swimming. And it was almost like you and I didn't belong together in that same sport. They were like, they'd look at you way taller than me because I'm this little nugget. And then me, and just be like, and now that I see it through a different lens, it's like, whoa.
Yeah.
I got the chills thinking about it. Like, yeah, she's a swimmer.
Yeah.
She's the fastest in the country, in fact. Like, I'll pull up her stats on the phone.
Yeah, I mean, I try to think, maybe this is like their first time seeing me, but it's not my first time being asked that question. So that's where I try and find patience. But like I said, like, this doesn't only just happen to me. This happens to a lot of Black people, and even people who probably don't even play a sport. It's like, just because the stereotype of, I was doing research and stuff like that and learning new things. And it's like, they would pour acid in pools so that Black people couldn't swim in it. And so those, and once they opened up public pools is when private pools started being built, because white people just really did not want Black people at the pool. They would bring bats, they would beat them, they would throw acid in the water. And that's where the stereotype is stemming from, because it's like, oh, you couldn't swim, like, you could not be a swimmer. Yeah, I am. And I think that's where I get so much fire to want to change people's minds, because it is just crazy to think that way, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. With the people that you interacted with, whether on or off the pool deck, what are some of the microaggressions that you've experienced as maybe a swimmer? And then obviously the ones that you were just talking about right there, where they ask, are you a basketball player or volleyball player? And you're like, no. Like, well, in the community.
Yeah. Well, on deck, I mean, I know you know this. I mean, you probably didn't think much of it, but like on deck, at least once a week or twice a week, someone would just come up and touch my hair.
Yeah.
They
would do it to her all the time.
All the time. And yeah, I mean, I just like dealt with it, because there's really no need to like throw a fit on deck. And to be honest with you, at that point in my life, I didn't even know that was something that I shouldn't be letting go on. Right. So I would laugh and go along with the joke, and it would just keep happening. So here we are with this feeling, right? That I'm suppressing and suppressing and suppressing, that actually really does bother me, but I don't know it yet. And then fast forward to May, here I am. All of this is just coming out. And I'm like,
it's like a volcano.
Yes,
of
I'm like,
emotions.
oh my God, they shouldn't have been saying that. I don't know why I went along with it, but it's like I didn't have the knowledge. So that whole hair thing. I mean, those are like the two biggest ones that I can think of personally for me is, and people saying you're articulate for a Black person. I remember coming home from the first day of middle school, and that was the first time I ever heard someone say something like that. I kid you not, I walk in, and this is like the integration of elementary schools, right? So I'm nervous because I'm 6 foot and I'm 12 years old, and I just like know I don't look the same. So that's that's off the table.
That alone is a lot.
Yeah. I kid you not, I step into the school, go to my class, and we have to introduce ourselves or whatever. And I do so. And the first thing I hear when I sit down is from a Black person is, man, she talk white. I was like, what does that even mean? So I go home. I'm very upset because I'm confused. I don't know what that means. Like, what does it mean to talk white versus to talk Black? Like, to me, I talk how I talk. This is how my parents talk. This is how I'm going to talk. And my sister sat me down. She's like 5 years older than me. So she's also had to deal with this because she also too, I mean, I would say we both are very articulate in the way that we talk. But that's not because we did something different. I think it's just because we applied ourselves. Our parents are from two different places. So we kind of have the neutral of the two places from where we're from. And she's like, nah, anytime someone tells you that, you tell them, no, I talk educated. And I was like, okay, I'll do that. But that is, I mean, if I can remember that over 10, 15 years later, that to me, it was one of my most moments of total, I guess, embarrassment, even though I shouldn't be embarrassed. But I just felt like I was having an outer body experience, but I was so embarrassed because they said that in front of the whole class. And I was just like, I don't know what that means. Like, I just froze. And, the older I get, I kept hearing that. And it just, the blow was lessened every time, right? Because I'm just suppressing and suppressing.
Yeah, like, you just accept it, you tolerate it. And finally, we're at a point where it's like, no, this is not okay. We don't accept this. We don't tolerate this anymore.
Yeah, like it's not okay. And it's finding that voice within yourself to be okay with your feelings. Because, you can feel one way and be like, oh, well, I don't want to cause a rift. I don't want to. And at this point, I have learned over this period of time, how I feel is how I feel. My feelings are very validated, and it's okay to feel this way. So yeah, my standards, I think, are already high, but they have now, they're higher now because I know how I should be treated, and I know the things that I will tolerate to be said to me. And so, because let's think about it the opposite way. I would never go up to one of my teammates and just start touching her hair or his hair for no reason.
Yeah.
So if you think about it like that, it's like crazy. Like, why are your hands in my hair? And
I know. No, this is not your hair.
Yeah.
You're not touched.
Yeah. So, I mean, those two microaggressions, honestly, I could go on all day because I've just experienced so much. And I have been fortunate enough to deliver speeches in front of boosters and really powerful people at our school. But, there will always be someone who thinks that I'm doing really well for a Black person, or I'm in such a great position for a Black person, or I've set myself up really well for a Black woman, or whatever the case may be. But to me, I don't look at it like that. I am who I am. I happen to be Black, and I now have a platform where I need to help and educate other people, and then help those who cannot help themselves.
Right. I love that.
Mm-hmm.
Before we talk about that 1, 2, 3 finish at NCAA's, can you, because I'm sure there are kids tuning in right now and they may not know what a microaggression is or what it means. Can you just give like a quick definition of what that is and how it makes you feel and why?
So basically, I guess like the dictionary version of a microaggression is a joke or a statement that's said to be funny, but is actually a derogatory statement. So comparing someone to a dog is not It's meant to be a joke because poodles are fluffy and it's meant to have, a positive connotation. But if you really look at it objectively, it is a very harmful statement because now you are comparing someone to a dog. So that is the basic definition of a microaggression. There's so many microaggressions that go on in the workplace that I'm not very familiar with because to be honest, I didn't really experience them like 2 years at Turner. But I do know that they go on. But yeah, it basically is a statement that is a joke, but it actually is very harmful. And to be endured over and over and over again, like a lot of Black people have, really creates feelings that you really just don't know what to do with, I guess, is the only way that I can describe it. You really don't know why you feel this way. And you just have to think back of all the years of like, you being like, oh yeah, that's okay. But it's actually not okay. And people should not tolerate when they're told things like that, like all lives matter. They do matter. But at this point in time, Black lives really do matter. I heard the comparison, like if your neighbor's house is on fire, and it has it could affect your house. You're going to help your neighbor put their house, get the fire out of their house. Yeah. And it's kind of like this now. It's like, yes, all lives do matter. But right now, Black lives are being lost for no reason. And they've been being lost for no reason for the past 400 years when they arrived here in 1619. So like that's where microaggression, that's where that those feelings stem from. It's just like so many years of just having to put up with stuff.
I love that comparison with the house fire because yes, if we have to put out that fire. That's the only one on fire right now. Like, why are we going to water the other ones when they're not on fire? So I think it puts it in perspective of what it truly means when we say Black Lives Matter. And back to what you said earlier, you just want to be equal. You want to be treated equally and looked at the same as everybody. And everybody deserves that right and should have it right. Mm-hmm. So let's talk about that 1-2-3 finish at NCAA's. I was fortunate enough to watch that live. And oh my God, I already got the chills thinking about it. You had said that you didn't really understand how significant that was.
Yeah.
How long did it take you to truly sink in and be like, that was groundbreaking. That was history.
You're going to hate this answer, but like a long time after. And I mean, I thought it was cool. I knew what it was, but I don't think I realized how crazy it was until I visited the African American History Museum in DC. Mm-hmm. So yeah, and that was in 2018 when I went to visit.
3 years later.
Pardon?
3 years after that race.
Yeah.
Wow.
Did it like hit me like a ton of bricks? Like, that was really cool. But
that's something cool.
Yeah. So I mean, I do remember that day because my 100 freestyle that year was really good. I was coming off of an SEC win and a school record, and I was feeling really good. And it was a really stacked field. I mean, I only got third by like 0.04. Like, I mean, my pinky nail barely made it in. But we still had, I think, the 400 free relay after that. And I know personally, I was thinking about that while I was on the podium. And so to me, I'm still in competition mode. I'm still that young kid who's like, I have to beat this person. I don't care what color they are or whatever. So that kind of was a shortcoming for me, and that I should have just basked in that moment and been like, wow, I'm actually a part of history. Like, this has never been done, and it will not be done for a really long time. So I wish, looking back, I spent more time to just look around and be thankful that I'm on the podium with these two awesome ladies. But yeah, when I went to the museum in 2018 and just kind of was blindsided by my history, it was crazy. I mean, for a long time in my life, swimming is and was like number one. Like, wake up, swim, eat, go to school, think about swim, go to swim after practice, everything. And in college, as you know, swimming is number one. I mean, it is. and
Yeah.
and so when I would hear of shootings or police brutality, people losing their life, to be honest, I would suppress those feelings. I'd be like, oh my God, that is so sad. And I would keep it pushing because in my mind, I can't help. I'm like, I see myself as only a swimmer. I'm like, oh, well, God, I hope that they get justice or whatever the case is. But when it hit me like a ton of bricks that I could help inspire another young Black girl or a Black boy to do something with their life and to go into a sport and, to look up to one of either three of us and know that they've gone through those hardships and I can do it too. That's huge. And it took me until after college to realize that like I had the platform to do this. I mean, I've always had the platform. I think I just didn't use it, which is a shame. But that's why when I came back to swimming, I just had such a fresh perspective because I knew what my intentions were to be in the sport. Obviously, number one is to do better than I did before, wherever that takes me. And number two, I love to help people. I mean, I feel like that's my calling in life anyways, but that race, now that I know its significance, will allow me to inspire others and has broadened my platform. And just because it's big, like I need to now use that platform. You know what I'm saying?
Right. And I think Nat, your platform is so big. And the fact that you are here today opening up about all this is only making that platform bigger, and you're educating more people. And I want to talk about that platform in the sport of swimming and your role now. I mean, you're one of a few Black swimmers on the national team.
Yeah.
Maybe I can count on one hand.
Yeah.
And it's the sad reality. And that's not just like a recent thing.
Yeah.
At all. That's been a forever thing. And it's something that you, Simone, Leah, Reese, all of these people, Maritza, Cullen, like you're all helping change this narrative of swimming being a white sport.
Yeah.
And I want you to talk about what you hope to see over the next few years and what you hope to do to help inspire this young generation of little kids that watch you, Simone and Leah, go 1, 2, 3 and be like, I want to be like them. If they can do it, I can. Like that's the coolest form of inspiration. So talk to me a little about how you help and how you hope to do that.
Yeah, well, once COVID clears up,
that's true.
Yeah, that's when I hope to get like from behind the computer screen and like get there in person. But I love doing clinics and I love teaching kids who they get there and they just know how to blow bubbles. And by the end, they can do one freestyle stroke and breathe. Like that gives me so much joy. So I would love to be able to do clinics. First and foremost, because it's like 60% of Black kids have inadequate swim skills, which means they either can barely float or they do not know how to swim at all. And so for me, it's a 2-part thing with clinics because I will never forget like a mom who brought her kid in it was a free clinic in Washington, D.C. in a lower socioeconomic area. She's bringing her child in to swim. And I was like, well, do you want to also do you know how to swim? And she said, no. And I said, oh, well, like it's a free clinic. Like I can teach you as well. She says, I'm not learning how to swim. And I'm like, okay. So for all the kids out there who have parents like that, because Black people not swimming is a stereotype. It's a stereotypical thing. For all these kids who have their role models as parents who do not want to learn how to swim and who are afraid of the water, only exacerbates the problem. And so that was a very eye-opening experience for me. So as much as I think, like, obviously grassroots is number one, we need to teach kids how to swim. We also need to teach parents how to swim. And one of the most amazing clinics that I ever did in my whole entire life was an adult swim clinic, because I actually felt like barriers were broken and stereotypes were broken. It's like these women were 40, 50 years old and they showed up And they were like, I'm only putting my feet in with attitude, right? And I'm like, okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
Here I am. It was me and 40 women, 40 grown women, and it was me. And I was like, oh, I don't know how I'm going to do that. But I like broke them into groups and I really gave myself to these women. I mean, I was so tired after the clinic, but I was so present in the moment that by the end of the class, these women who only sat on the edge and put their feet in were now like, we went through and they were like showing everyone what they learned. And they were like, I'm going to go underwater for 5 seconds, like whole body underwater.
Submerging completely.
Yes. From not even wanting to be there to submerging their whole self in the water, some pushing off the wall. I mean, I was like, I didn't cry because I didn't want to like cry in front of them, but it was such a heartwarming thing for me because that is what needs to happen. Like the fear of water is, I mean, you need to learn how to be safe around water. There's no way around that. So for me, grassroots, teaching kids how to swim is how I want to use my platform. I also want to break the barrier of older Black people who don't want to swim or have been told like you shouldn't be in the water. And also another thing that I'm very passionate about is, so these kids learn to swim now and then what? You know, it's like they're on a all Black team who only competes against other Black teams in the same LSC. And they don't really get a chance to broaden their horizons or see what other competition is out there. So it's kind of hard to make your way up the ranks when you don't know what you're up against. And like some of the people you named before, me, Leah, Simone, Reese, we were all very fortunate to be on a team that had very fast people on it. And so we always had that next goal. And then once we hit that goal, we were able to go to junior nationals and above. And so we were able to see with our own eyes, like, okay, well, I got to pick it up. But if you never are able to get there because you're just in this bubble, then that's an issue. That's a big reason in my mind why there aren't a lot of Black people at the higher levels, because they're just like, there's a lot right here, and then they don't even know what's up here.
Right.
So that's something else that I would love to help with, just being able to like be on programs that expose kids, whether that be a grant program so that they can afford to travel, because as you know, swimming is expensive. One of the most expensive.
So expensive.
Yeah.
People are like, what do you mean? All you need is a swimsuit and a cap and some goggles.
You need a hotel room for a week. You got to eat. You got to,
You have no idea.
Yeah. So a lot, another problem is like pay. Like a lot of people cannot afford to keep swimming because, the better you get, the more expensive it is, because now you're staying places for a week at a time. So yeah, there's just like a lot that I'd love to do. And, like me and my competition is number one. And so that stuff may come later in my career, but it's definitely a passion of mine to expose those swimmers who are really serious about the sport, to get them the exposure they need and to also get them the funds if they don't have it. So that's not something that they have to worry about, because fortunately I never had to worry about that. I was really oblivious to that until I got older and seeing how much swimming actually costs. But a lot of people stop swimming because they just can't afford it. I mean, it's really easy to pick up a basketball and go to a park. It's free, actually. So it's, there's a lot that goes into it. Not everybody can afford a $400+ tech suit that lasts 3 swims.
Yeah. So, like it's nuts. And we're lucky that was never a problem, like you said, for you or myself. But I think it's so incredible because I'm kind of like looking into the future now, like Natalie Hinds in 3, 4, 5 years, like having her own swim school or working with an organization or running her own organization where you get these Black kids out of that bubble.
Yeah.
And you give them funds to bring them to higher level swimming or expose them to different athletes. And you're right, that is how you get them from one level to the next. And on top of that, like the parents aspect, I love that. Like, yeah. I mean, if you're a child and your parents don't know how to swim, you're 88% less likely to know how to swim yourself.
Yeah, it's not something you want to do. Your parents.
And it makes sense. Like if mom and dad or whoever your parents are can't go into the water, they're not going to bring you in the water. No way.
Yeah, like I have fond memories of my mom before I joined the swim team in the backyard pool with us. Like
Yeah.
it was just like she got in too. And so for me, these are things that I never had to think about. I thought this was normal. I mean, I look back on my childhood and I'm like, I am very fortunate. I'm very fortunate that I was able to travel. Money was not an issue when it came to swimming. My parents made a point to expose me to as much as they could because a lot of kids do not get that. And especially in the big city, it's like, how do you address a mom who has to take her kid from work across town to practice? Like, how do you address that? Like, there's so much going on. There's so many variables, and it's like, I'm very passionate about that. So I just like love to talk about it and how it's like a huge puzzle that needs to be solved. But yes, those are like the 3 or 4 things that I hope to tackle with my platform in some way, shape, or form in the future.
And you will. And I'm like behind you the whole way. So let's talk a little bit about education and how that is one of the most formidable ways to help.
Yeah.
And what can people watching right now do aside from listening to you and understanding you to educate themselves outside of this webinar?
Yeah. So I just want to start that question though by saying that in the midst of my anger and frustration and foreign feelings and all of that, I came to a point where I realized that a lot of people act the way they do because they do not know. And like how you and I have talked, you ask questions because you legitimately do not know. And there's a lot of things that I don't know either, but I feel like I can't judge someone or I can't have a thought about someone's actions without knowing if they're even educated about the topic. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. If you want to learn how to be a better swimmer, you go to practice. If you want to learn how to cook a meal, you get a cookbook. Like if you want to learn about, the suffrage of Black people for the past 400 years, you go to Google, you go and pick up a book, you read an article. The resources are endless. And I feel like that to me is like what I hold dear. I'm like, are you educated? That's what I want to know. I don't want to exactly know your opinion yet. I just want to know, are you educated? Are you doing the most that you can for this topic? And I'm not saying you have to shove a book down your throat like every day or every week, but just being open and receptive to unlearning and relearning something else. Mm-hmm. As far as educational resources, I know we've talked about this a little bit, but the Equal Justice Initiative is a nonprofit organization that I think the world of. I think it's an amazing program. So back in, I think it was last year or 2 years ago, my grandmother, who's a huge Black history buff, she wrote a book and everything. She's just like, that's her. She's like a walking encyclopedia. She and my family and I went to the Lynch Museum in Montgomery, Alabama, where my family is from, my dad's side. And so in that, the Equal Justice Initiative kind of like collaborated with the Lynch Museum. So it's a huge memorial of like, I wouldn't say everyone because that's not true, but a huge number of people who were lynched from like back until I think it's around civil rights time. So they have it by counties of like all of America. They're separated by counties and they have everyone's name. And if they found people that they don't know who they are, they'll write unknown, but from this area. It is a huge memorial and it's just chilling, to be honest with you, to just walk through and see all of these names of people who were lynched, regardless of the reason. None of this was deserved. So you could go, if you knew someone in your family who was lynched, you could literally go and find them on these copper pillars. Mm-hmm. And so what the Equal Justice Initiative does alongside this memorial and museum is they fight for people who basically cannot fight for themselves. So people who have been who were arrested for selling weed, for example. Black people are being sentenced like 5 to 10 years for being found in possession of weed, which is absolutely crazy. they're being put in level 5 prisons. And I'm reading about all of this and I'm just like choking back tears because it's just like my first run-in, I guess, with something that's actually happening right now. So a lot of the stuff that I've read is stuff that's happened in the past, but like this is stuff that's happening right now. And watched videos on what happens to these people in prison from the people who got out. They also provide counsel to people who have been sentenced for life or, unnecessary sentences for people who are innocent, for people who this is their first offense, who now have life. And it's just some crazy stuff. And so they have a lot of success stories of getting people out of jail, like 14-year-olds who are being tried as adults who get multiple life sentences. It's mind-blowing. So here I am. I spent like 3 hours in this museum because I didn't even know that this was a thing. I mean, that shows you where I started. But yeah, they also are there was amongst that, there was so much other information that was just so good to read. And I just think everybody should go visit this, this memorial. But that program or that organization, I will always just tell, if anybody wants to help, donate to that organization because they are trying to help everyone. And yes, mostly Black people, but they help everyone who doesn't have a voice. There was white people who were being put into level 5 prisons. It's just kind of like social injustice, but because it's social injustice, there are a lot more Black people who are victims. So they fight racial injustice as well. So that would be where I say start. If you don't know where to start to get educated, go to EJI. I think it's EJI.org.
Yep.
And that is where you should start. I mean, they have basically everything that you would need. And if you're in the area, I would 100%, if they're open for COVID, I don't know, but I would 100% go. It is life-changing and I would go back if I could, but that is my, I'm sure there's a lot of other organizations who are doing amazing work, but that's just the one that I resonate the most with.
Yeah. And I think it's important too, for everybody listening right now, everybody's at a different point in learning right now and in educating themselves. But I think the most important is that you start. And so if you haven't started, I encourage you to start there. Go to EJI.org and do what Natalie said. Look around, try to educate yourself and understand things better, because that's really what's going to make this world, this country, a better place.
Yeah.
And Natalie, you just being so open and vulnerable and willing to do this and have this conversation, I know it's not easy.
Yeah.
And you are changing lives by doing this, by really setting everybody up, especially those little kids. Like, I think about those little Black kids watching right now and being like, I'm going to be the next Natalie Hinds. And that is the coolest thing. And they're going to follow in your footsteps. And you've just educated and inspired so many people to be better and do better. Yeah. And you've inspired me to do that over the past few months. And so I hope everybody has gotten as much as they can out of this conversation. I'm lucky enough to have Natalie's number, so I can call her and be like, hey, I want to talk to you about this, or hey, I have a question about this. And she's always open and super honest with every answer that she gives.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, you're an amazing human being. Amazing athlete, duh, but amazing human being. Just, you can't even compare. All right, so with that, I do want to move into the question portion of our little conversation. We had so many people write in on Instagram, and I do want to take some time to let Natalie answer those questions because they were incredible. And so the first one, Nat, for you is, what was the most difficult part for you as a young female Black swimmer in America?
I guess just what I touched on earlier, the stereotypes. I feel like that kind of really irritated me, but I never said anything about it. And I always wondered why it was such a big deal that I swam, but I just didn't have the knowledge to answer that question. And obviously now I do, but definitely being counted out because I was a Black swimmer and not a Black basketball player or a Black volleyball player or a track athlete for that matter. That I think was the hardest thing for me to get over when I was growing up.
Yeah. All right. Number 2, how do you handle times when you have self-doubt or frustrations?
Self-doubt or frustrations. Okay. Well, I like to look at it objectively. So, I worked with Kristen Shevchunas, who we all know as the confidence coach. Kristen. But one thing and one strategy she always told me was to just write down your truths. So things that can't be argued, that are true to you, that you can refer back to when you are feeling self-doubt or frustration. So whenever I feel like I'm having a bad day, or if I feel like my practices aren't going as well as I want them to, I always just kind of refer to those truths. I read them as many times as I at least believe one, and then I do actually feel a little bit better. But I also love to sleep, and I think sleeping helps me just kind of like recalibrate. I know when I haven't got enough sleep when I start acting crazy. So
me too.
Yeah.
Take as many naps as you need, kids.
Yeah, naps are good
for you.
Yeah, naps are good.
Naps are very good. All right, number 3 was, what was the motivation to start Luminary, and what does it mean to you today?
Well, the motivation to start Luminary was I wanted something on my wall, but I didn't want to pay for it. I wanted to make it myself. I wanted to have something on my wall. And I looked it up and I was like, okay, well, I could probably make this. Bought the stuff to make it. It was terrible. And then I had noticed that I was getting a little bit anxiety because I had come back to swimming. And so I was just kind of dealing with the fears and the doubts that plagued me from my previous career. So I found that weaving just really calmed my nerves, passed the time. And also it wasn't swimming, so I could get obsessed with it, which is what I did. So that's kind of how I started Luminary. My mom actually came up with the name to spell it the way that it's spelled. I know it is an actual word, but it was a side hustle, but I guess now it's actually a business. But I think now it means what it means to me now. Like I said, I love to help people, and I really love making stuff. And I think if somebody has something that was literally made with my 2 hands and thought up in my brain that is now on, all weaved together with love, I think it's so cool. I love seeing it on people's walls, and when they send me stuff after they've got it, it really does make my day. So, sometimes if I feel overwhelmed with it, I won't do it because I'm okay, Nat, this is a hobby, chill out. But I really do enjoy it. I think it's a good segue from, or a good distraction from swimming, which I encourage people to have. But yeah, that's basically why I started it and why I still continue to do it.
For those of you that are I need one, go to nataliehinds.com and you can find all the information there. And to your point, Nat, I think art is so cool because her art is in Rhode Island, where I am. It's in Connecticut, where Caroline is. It's in Austin, Texas, where Mitch is. It's literally all over the country. And you did make it with your own 2 hands. And I think art in itself, regardless of what it is or what medium, is so cool. And you are touching so many different homes.
Yeah, I think.
By the way, I don't know if you're still doing the custom orders, but I got to pick my colors, which I thought was cool. So
I also do think it's it helps me cope with being at home all the time during quarantine, just because they're traveling more than I am. So I'm okay, I just, Yeah,
no, and it helps so much too, especially when you are swimming, you have to have a balance, because if swimming's the only thing on your plate,
that's a lot.
It's going to get old real quick. So Luminary, guys, check it out, nataliehinds.com. All right, with that, number 4, what is something that keeps you going when you are ready to give up?
Okay, so you actually help with this because you always think, or you always say think about your future self.
Yeah.
And that's literally what I do. I just think, okay, well, I don't want to go to practice, but if I do not go later today, will I be irritated, or will I be yeah, no, it was fine? I will not. I will be so guilty. And I think about that. So I think about my future self. And I also, my mom actually sent me home with like this framed picture of me when I was little, and I was like in a competition or something about to dive off the block. And she sent it to me like saying, hey, this is like you in your purest form. So like if you ever feel like sad or, you know, discouraged, like look at this one, look at this picture, because this like young version of you like had so many aspirations and stuff. So I always look at like a younger picture of me where I like didn't care about any distraction. Like I just wanted to win. So that also helps as well. So living in the future and living in the past help.
I love that.
Yeah. So that helps me get through like a tougher time.
Yeah. And I do think there is something to say for like little Natalie or little Elizabeth, because I think if you told little Natalie where big Natalie was today, she would be like over the moon.
And she'd be like, what?
You're that good? Like you were the best in the country? What? Like, and that's so cool to think about, because I feel like sometimes we are super hard on ourselves, especially as athletes. And if we were really to just take a step back and go back to 7-year-old version of ourselves and be like, hey, one day you're going to do X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I'd be like, I am the queen of America. Like I am amazing.
Yeah.
But instead we're like, oh, like I only did this. Like it's such a perspective shift that I think we need to do more.
Yeah.
More often. But okay. Number 5. What advice would you give to a 6-year-old just starting a swim team?
So number 1 is just to have fun. I mean, there's really nothing pressing going on at 6. So I think having fun, but also like learning those details, learn how to streamline properly, learn how to kick properly, learn the 4 strokes properly, because having fun when you're young and then like being able to build upon that is so important. There's so many people that I know of who were like untouchable when they were 10, but like hated the sport when they were 15. So it is so important to just have fun, learn the details, and like the hard work will come, but it's not at 6. So
right. Get the fundamentals down first. Then we'll put in the yardage. I love that. And then number 6, anything and everything nutrition tip wise. What have you got?
Okay, so you know this about me, kind of, but like my senior year was like such an uphill battle for me. And when I had to have time to reflect, I realized a lot of it had to do with my nutrition. Like I just didn't eat enough, and I would be, I was never gaining weight. I mean, I thought I tried everything, but the fact of the matter was I just wasn't eating enough. And I always had like stomach problems at the end of college, and I could never figure out why. Like my stomach would just cramp up after like a dinner, and I always used to be like, there's too much MSG. But
it just wasn't right tonight.
Yeah. And so not only till I stopped swimming for that 2 years in between then and now, was I able to like spend the time and figure out like what I like, what I don't like, what, how to cook properly.
Yeah.
So now, I mean, it depends on who you are as a person. Like, do you want to gain weight as an athlete? Do you want to maintain? It depends. But for me personally, I have to eat every so often. And so it's learning that about yourself, learning that I always have to keep my jaws chewing at some point in time. What foods, like oatmeal is a staple for me. Like I may get sick of it, but like I know how that's going to work. Same with meats. Like what I eat at practice or before practice throughout the day is different than what I would eat at a meet. And so it's just making those little adjustments and being able to experiment. Like it took me 2 to 3 meets to get down. Like when I came back to the sport to get down, like, oh my God, I'm actually losing weight at meets. I need to figure out when am I eating? What time am I eating? I had figured out I needed to eat 2 lunches, like one at lunch. And then I needed to eat an hour before I went back to the pool. And then I needed to eat a heavier dinner, even though I didn't want to after, because like, here I am firing on all cylinders.
You're like withering away.
Yeah. So experimenting and observing and taking notes, there's nothing wrong with that, to nail down what is going to work for you. So Yeah, I mean, my nutrition's pretty set now. I know what I need and when I need it, and that is a huge load off for real.
Yeah, but I think like that point you just said it, like hit the nail on the head. You know what you need, and everybody needs to figure out what they need, because what Natalie needs is definitely not what I need.
Yeah.
Like, we are two different athletes, two different bodies. So to her point, figure out what you need.
I also think it's important though to have something you can count on. Like I said, oatmeal I can count on before practice. I also love teriyaki chicken. If I am running zero on energy, I know I can autopilot cook chicken teriyaki.
Yeah.
I can autopilot cook taco salad. I eat tacos like 5 times a week
because love tacos.
Because I'm from Texas. Like, I love Tex-Mex. So those 2 meals are my go-tos when I have no creativity. If I have a 2-a-day and I'm tired, like, you also need to have those meals that you can count on, because there will be days where you just don't want to eat. And, I don't really want to eat out at this point in time. So you just have to have those meals that you can count on.
Yeah. Find your go-to meals, people.
Mm-hmm.
That's all it takes. All right. Number 7, last question.
Mm-hmm.
How do you hope to inspire the upcoming generation of Black swimmers?
Well, I would like for them to look at me and think like, wow, she's gone through all these hardships and she seems okay. So I think I can do the same. And that's kind of what I keep in the forefront of my mind on any decision that I make with my brand, when I don't want to go to practice, because at this point, it's not only for me, it's for so many other people. And, at the end of the day, it is me putting in the work. It is me, in the race and everything. But you have to be able to realize that when you if you're an elite swimmer, or if you're an elite in whatever sport that you're in, like, there's so many people watching you that you have that you just don't know. Right. And it's very important to realize that. So I want people who that I may never meet or that I don't know to look at me and think like, wow, and look at my story and think, wow, she's like the definition of resilience. And, anytime that times get tough, like, I'll be able to do this. If she could do it, then I can do it too. So that's what I hope, that that I can inspire other people by being resilient, and always just like being grateful for what season of life that I'm in.
Yeah. I mean, Nat, you are the epitome of grace, a class act.
Thank you.
Humble, kind. I can't say enough amazing things about you. And I thank you for just educating me, educating everybody, being open and honest. And I hope all of you took away so many things from this conversation that we had. And again, check out Natalie Hinds at nataliehinds.com. Her Instagram is @_Natalie N Hinds. @_N Hinds. I got it. But before I close out, Nat, is there anything else that you want to touch on or say before we leave?
I mean, we really said it all, but
we went in today.
I guess like the only thing that I would love to just get across is just to be, at this point in time, like, just be open. I mean, there's so much negativity in the world right now, and I think it's really important to just be open to hearing other people, and also give yourself grace. I mean, you have taught me like what it means to give yourself grace, but especially right now, like, there's just so many things going on and so many things that are to be worried about and that could work you up, but it's okay to just take a day for yourself. I know that I've had to do that multiple times in the past 6 months, and I don't feel guilty for it, because like, that is what your body is telling you to do. Because I know there's a lot of people in different situations. Some people still aren't swimming. Some people are still at home going crazy. Some people, like, we are not doing long course. Like, we can swim once a day, and I'm very grateful for that. So I'm going to take what we can get. But yeah, some days I just wake up and I'm like, oh my God, this is crazy. That's how I feel. And so I just try to remember to take it task by task. Because if you look at the big picture, it's really scary. But I just try to remember, okay, I'm going to get up, make my oatmeal, go to practice. And that's all I can control. So just make sure that you are doing what you can control. It's a lot easier said than done for sure, but it's very important that you just try and stay in your own lane and do what's best for you.
Nat, thank you so much. You are literally the best. Everybody who tuned in, thank you. Caroline behind the scenes, thank you again.
Caroline.
Network. This was amazing for me, and I think everybody else enjoyed it just as much, if not more. You know, Nat, thank you. Seriously,
I feel
changing the world.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.